Hello, little dreamers. I'm Luna. Welcome to Luna Bedtime Story. If you'd like a new bedtime story waiting for you every week, don't forget to subscribe and join our cozy little family. Now, get comfortable. Snuggle into your favorite blanket. Let your shoulders relax. Close your eyes. Let's begin our story.
On a quiet winter evening, when the fields of Lincolnshire rested beneath a pale sky, a child was born in the small English hamlet of Woolsthorpe. The date was Christmas Day in 1642, according to the calendar then used in England, or January 4, 1643, according to the modern calendar. The child was named Isaac Newton. His birthplace was not a palace, a university, or a great center of learning. It was a farmhouse surrounded by fields, trees, narrow roads, and the steady rhythms of rural life. His father, also named Isaac Newton, had died before his son was born. The younger Isaac therefore entered the world without ever knowing him. He was small and physically weak at birth, and his survival was considered uncertain. Yet the quiet child from Woolsthorpe would eventually transform humanity's understanding of light, motion, mathematics, and the heavens. When Isaac was still very young, his mother remarried. She moved away to live with her new husband, while Isaac remained in Woolsthorpe with his grandmother. For several important years of his childhood, his life unfolded at a distance from his mother. The surviving evidence does not allow us to know exactly how the young Isaac experienced this separation. What is known is that he became a private and independent person. He learned to spend long periods alone, absorbed in his own interests and observations. Solitude, which might have felt empty to another child, became a space in which his curiosity could grow. The landscape around Woolsthorpe provided countless quiet things to observe. There were changes in the weather, shifting shadows, flowing streams, turning wheels, growing plants, and the movements of the sun and stars. To most people, these were familiar parts of the world. To Isaac, they became questions. Why did shadows change during the day? How could the movement of the sun be measured? What caused one object to move while another remained still? Could nature's apparently complicated behavior be understood through a small number of clear principles? These questions would eventually occupy Isaac for much of his life. But as a boy, he first explored them through small constructions and careful observations. He attended school in Grantham, a market town several miles from Woolsthorpe. During part of his education, he lived in the household of an apothecary. An apothecary prepared medicines and worked with substances, measurements, containers, and simple chemical processes. Living in such a place may have offered a curious boy many interesting things to examine. Accounts of Newton's youth describe his interest in mechanical devices and models. Although some childhood stories have become embroidered over time, it is clear that he enjoyed making things and understanding how they worked. The habits behind those activities were more important than the objects themselves. He was learning to observe, construct, adjust, and try again. This was the beginning of a pattern that would remain with him. Newton did not merely accept the appearance of something. He wanted to know the arrangement beneath it. If a result seemed strange, he examined it more closely. If an explanation seemed incomplete, he continued searching. For a time, however, it appeared that his future might have little to do with books or scientific investigation. His mother returned to Woolsthorpe after the death of her second husband, and Isaac was expected to help manage the family farm. Farming was practical and necessary work, but Newton showed little enthusiasm or aptitude for it. His attention often wandered away from agricultural responsibilities and towards subjects that interested him more deeply. The attempt to turn him into a farmer did not succeed. Fortunately, people around him recognized that his abilities might be better suited to education. He returned to school and prepared for university. In 1661, Newton entered Trinity College at the University of Cambridge. He was leaving the rural surroundings of his childhood and entering one of England's oldest centers of learning. Yet Cambridge was not instantly transformed by every new scientific idea spreading through Europe. Much of its formal curriculum still relied on the writings of ancient authorities, including Aristotle. Newton studied the required material, but his curiosity led him beyond it. He began reading newer works by European thinkers who were questioning traditional descriptions of the universe. Nicolaus Copernicus had proposed a sun-centered planetary system. Johannes Kepler had studied the paths of the planets. Galileo Galilei had investigated motion and used telescopic observations to challenge older assumptions about the heavens. René Descartes had attempted to explain nature through matter and motion. To Newton, these ideas did not form a finished picture. They opened the door to a vast room filled with unanswered questions. He began creating notebooks filled with observations, calculations, questions, and reflections. In one set of notes, he gathered philosophical questions that interested him. Rather than treating knowledge as a collection of statements to memorize, he approached it as something unfinished. This attitude became central to his work. An accepted claim was not necessarily a final answer. Every explanation had to be considered, tested, and compared with observation. Newton was not the kind of student who simply completed an assignment and then put the subject aside. When a question captured his attention, he could pursue it for hours, days, or much longer. He read deeply and worked through difficult mathematical problems. He developed his own methods when the existing ones seemed insufficient. His progress was often private. Many of the ideas that later made him famous began in notebooks that few people saw. He was not yet a celebrated professor or a public figure. He was a young student quietly teaching himself how to investigate the universe. In 1665, Newton received his bachelor's degree. Around the same time, an outbreak of plague forced Cambridge University to close temporarily. Students left the university, and Newton returned to Woolsthorpe. The interruption might have seemed like a serious obstacle. He no longer had regular access to university lectures or the daily life of Cambridge. Yet the period away from Cambridge became one of the most productive stages of his intellectual life. Back at the family home, Newton had something he valued greatly: time to think. He continued working on mathematics. He considered the behavior of moving objects. He experimented with light and color. He reflected on the forces that might guide the moon and planets along their paths. Newton later described the period of 1665 and 1666 as the prime of his age for invention. Many of the ideas he developed then would require years of further refinement. But their foundations took shape during this quiet interval in Lincolnshire. One of Newton's deepest mathematical interests concerned change. The world is filled with quantities that do not remain still. A falling object gains speed. A planet continually changes direction as it moves along its orbit. The slope of a curved line varies from one point to another. The area beneath a curve grows as the curve extends. Existing mathematical methods could solve many problems, but Newton needed more powerful tools to describe quantities changing continuously. He therefore developed methods that became part of what is now known as calculus. Calculus would eventually become essential in mathematics, physics, engineering, astronomy, economics, and many other fields. It provides ways of analyzing motion, growth, variation, and accumulation. Newton did not immediately publish a complete public account of his early mathematical work. He often developed ideas privately and returned to them repeatedly. Another mathematician, Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, later developed his own system of calculus and published it independently. Questions about priority eventually led to a famous and bitter dispute. For a bedtime telling of Newton's life, the details of that argument matter less than the larger intellectual achievement. During the 17th century, new mathematical tools emerged that allowed nature to be described with greater precision, and both Newton and Leibniz played central roles in that development. Newton's mathematical thought became the foundation upon which much of his later work in motion and gravity was built. At Woolsthorpe, Newton also turned his attention to light. People had long observed that light passing through certain pieces of glass could produce colors. A common assumption was that the glass somehow added color to white light. Newton investigated the matter through carefully arranged experiments with prisms. He allowed a narrow beam of sunlight to enter a darkened room and pass through a prism. The light spread into a band of colors. Newton then performed further experiments to understand what was happening. He found that the individual colors behaved consistently. Passing a selected color through another prism did not transform it into an entirely different color. He also demonstrated that the colors could be recombined to produce white light. From these experiments, Newton concluded that white light was not simple and colorless in the way people had assumed. It was composed of different colors that could be separated and brought together again. The conclusion was elegant. The prism was not painting light with new colors. It was revealing colors already present within the light. It is easy to imagine how peaceful the experiment might have appeared from the outside. A narrow beam entered a dim room. It touched a piece of glass and unfolded into color. Yet behind that quiet display was a major change in the scientific understanding of light. Newton's work helped establish a foundation for modern physical optics. It also influenced the way he thought about telescopes. Traditional telescopes used lenses to gather and focus light. However, lenses could produce unwanted bands or distortions of color. Newton understood that this problem was connected to the different ways colors were refracted. He therefore designed a telescope that used a curved mirror rather than relying entirely on a large lens. The resulting reflecting telescope was compact and effective. Newton built a working instrument, and it attracted attention beyond Cambridge. The telescope helped bring him recognition from the Royal Society, an important scientific organization in London. Newton was elected a Fellow of the Royal Society in 1672. Returning to Cambridge after the plague years, Newton continued his academic career. He became a Fellow of Trinity College, and in 1669 he was appointed Lucasian Professor of Mathematics. He was still a young man, but he now occupied an important university position. His responsibilities included lecturing, although teaching in a lecture room was not the activity through which he would make his greatest impression. His strongest work occurred in private study, where he could concentrate for long periods without interruption. Newton's surroundings at Cambridge suited this kind of life. College rooms, libraries, courtyards, and gardens offered spaces for reading and reflection. Letters carried ideas between scholars. Books connected Cambridge with discoveries being made across Europe. Scientific questions moved slowly through correspondence, but a thoughtful letter could begin a discussion lasting for years. Newton communicated some of his findings about light to the Royal Society. The response was not entirely peaceful. Other natural philosophers questioned his conclusions and methods. Newton found criticism difficult, particularly when he believed his experiments had already demonstrated the answer. The disagreement revealed an important tension in his personality. Newton wanted his ideas to withstand examination, but he did not always enjoy the personal experience of public debate. After disputes over his work on light, he became more cautious about sharing unfinished research. For long periods, he preferred silence and privacy. He kept working, filling pages with calculations, experiments, theological studies, and investigations into substances and transformations. Some of these writings were not widely understood until centuries later. Newton's interests were much broader than the subjects for which he is now best known. He studied theology extensively and devoted time to the history and interpretation of religious texts. He also investigated alchemy, a field that combined practical experimentation with older philosophical ideas about matter and transformation. Modern readers sometimes imagine a clear boundary between scientific investigation and every other kind of inquiry. In Newton's lifetime, those boundaries were not always so sharply defined. Newton saw nature as an ordered creation containing principles that could be discovered. Mathematics, experiment, history, theology, and the study of matter all belonged to his search for underlying order. He wrote far more on some of these private subjects than he published. His notebooks reveal a mind that rarely stopped investigating. Even when one question seemed settled, another waited behind it. Among all Newton's questions, one became especially powerful. Could the movements of earthly objects and the movements of heavenly bodies be explained by the same principles? For much of human history, the heavens had seemed separate from the ordinary world. Stones fell toward the ground, while the moon traveled across the night sky. Apples descended from trees, while planets continued along immense paths around the sun. These motions appeared very different. Newton began to see a connection between them. The famous story of Newton and the apple has been repeated in many forms. In exaggerated versions, an apple falls directly onto his head and instantly delivers the complete theory of gravity. History is rarely so simple. There is credible evidence that Newton later described watching an apple fall and wondering why objects consistently moved toward the earth. The observation may have encouraged his thinking, but it did not produce a finished theory in a single moment. His theory of universal gravitation grew through mathematics, astronomical information, and years of sustained reasoning. The important part of the apple story is not the apple itself. It is the question Newton asked. A person might watch 1,000 objects fall and consider the event ordinary. Newton looked at ordinary motion and asked whether the same attraction might extend far beyond the surface of the earth. If Earth attracted an apple, perhaps its influence reached the moon. Perhaps gravity continually pulled the moon toward Earth, while the moon's forward motion prevented it from falling straight down. The result would be an orbit, a continuous falling around Earth. The same general principle might explain the planets moving around the sun. The force acting in an English orchard might belong to the same system that shaped the paths of distant worlds. The sky and the ground might follow one connected order. Newton did not rely on imagination alone. The idea had to be expressed mathematically and compared with astronomical observation. He investigated how gravitational attraction would vary with distance. He worked on the mathematics of curved motion and considered the laws that governed bodies at rest and in motion. The final theory required patience. Ideas developed during the plague years remained unpublished or incomplete for a long time. Newton turned to other projects and continued refining his methods. Then another scientist helped draw the work into the open. Edmund Halley was an English astronomer with a strong interest in planetary motion. In the 1680s, he visited Newton at Cambridge and asked him about the path a planet would follow if attracted toward the sun by a force that decreased according to the square of the distance. Newton indicated that the path would be an ellipse. Halley recognized the importance of the answer and encouraged Newton to provide the mathematical demonstration. The request awakened Newton's concentration on the subject. He began preparing a more complete treatment of motion and gravitation. The project grew into a major book titled Philosophiae Naturalis Principia Mathematica, commonly called the Principia. Published in 1687, the Principia presented a mathematical description of motion and universal gravitation. Edmund Halley played an important part in encouraging and supporting its publication. The book was difficult. Newton wrote for readers capable of following advanced mathematical reasoning. Yet, the central ideas reached far beyond any single calculation. Newton described 3 laws of motion. The first explained that an object remains at rest or continues moving uniformly in a straight line unless acted upon by a force. This principle is associated with inertia. A book resting on a table does not begin sliding across the room without a cause. A moving object does not naturally need to lose its motion merely because it is moving. Changes in motion result from forces. The second law connected force with changes in motion. In modern introductory form, it is commonly expressed through the relationship among force, mass, and acceleration. A stronger force produces a greater change in motion, while a more massive object requires more force to achieve the same acceleration. The third law described mutual interaction. When one body exerts a force upon another, the second exerts an equal and opposite force upon the first. These laws could be applied to falling objects, rolling objects, projectiles, machines, tides, moons, and planets. Together with universal gravitation, they formed a unified mathematical system. Newton proposed that every mass attracted every other mass. The strength of the attraction depended on the masses involved and the distance between them. The same principle could describe an object falling near Earth and a planet traveling around the Sun. The universe had not become less beautiful through this explanation. It had become connected. A planet did not require one set of rules because it was in the heavens, while a stone followed another because it was on earth. Both belonged to the same natural order. The Principia brought Newton international recognition. Other scholars debated parts of his system, particularly the idea that gravity could act across empty space. Yet even critics recognized the mathematical power of the work. Over time, Newton's approach reshaped scientific thought. Newton's achievement was not simply the discovery of an isolated fact called gravity. People had always known that unsupported objects fell. His deeper accomplishment was to formulate a mathematical theory connecting terrestrial motion with the motions of the moon and planets. He provided a framework in which observations could be organized, predictions could be calculated, and physical behavior could be traced to general laws. Imagine, for a peaceful moment, the night sky above Woolsthorpe. The stars appear almost still. The moon moves so gradually that its motion is difficult to notice from 1 minute to the next. Nothing in the scene announces an equation. Nothing explains itself aloud. Newton's work suggested that beneath the stillness, every object participated in an immense structure of motion and attraction. Earth traveled around the sun. The moon traveled around Earth. Tides rose and fell. Falling objects returned toward the ground. Different events were joined by principles that could be followed through mathematics. Years after the Principia, Newton published another major work, Optics. It presented his investigations of light and color in a fuller form. His experiments had shown that white light contains a spectrum of colors, and his optical research influenced both theory and the construction of instruments. Optics appeared in 1704. By then, Newton's life had expanded beyond Cambridge. In 1696, he moved to London to become Warden of the Royal Mint. 3 years later, he became Master of the Mint. The Royal Mint was responsible for producing England's coinage, and Newton took his official duties seriously. This new role may appear far removed from gravity and light, but it called upon some of the same qualities that shaped his scientific work: attention to detail, persistence, accuracy, and an interest in systems. Newton helped oversee the Great Recoinage, a major attempt to replace old and damaged silver coins. He examined the mint's operations and pursued the responsibilities of his position with determination. London offered a different rhythm from Cambridge. Instead of the enclosed life of a college, Newton encountered government, administration, public responsibility, and a broader social world. His reputation continued to grow. In 1703, Newton became president of the Royal Society. He remained in that position for the rest of his life. In 1705, Queen Anne knighted him during a visit to Cambridge, and he became Sir Isaac Newton. Recognition did not greatly simplify Newton's personality. He was capable of generosity and friendship, but he also remained sensitive to criticism and protective of his work. Disputes could occupy his attention for long periods. His life illustrates that an extraordinary intellect does not remove ordinary human difficulties. Newton was disciplined, but he was not always calm. He searched for order in nature, yet his relationships with other scholars could become complicated. He made discoveries that encouraged cooperation across generations, yet he sometimes guarded his own research closely. These contradictions do not diminish the value of his work. They make his story more human. Genius did not arrive as a perfect gift detached from personality. It emerged through concentration, curiosity, stubbornness, uncertainty, ambition, and years of effort. Newton's life also reminds us that discovery is rarely a single, brilliant moment. The apple has become a convenient symbol because it transforms a difficult history into one simple scene. But Newton's true work cannot be reduced to a falling piece of fruit. His understanding grew from reading earlier thinkers, performing experiments, developing mathematical methods, corresponding with other scholars, reconsidering old calculations, and returning to questions that had remained unresolved. The process was slow, even when the ideas were powerful. Newton stood within a long chain of human inquiry. Copernicus changed the arrangement of the known cosmos. Kepler described planetary paths. Galileo studied motion and observed the heavens. Descartes developed new mathematical and philosophical approaches. Halley recognized the importance of Newton's work and helped bring the Principia into the world. Newton gathered many streams of thought and carried them into a remarkably unified system. He never claimed that every mystery had been solved. A deeper understanding often creates more questions than it removes. To discover one principle is to glimpse a larger territory still waiting to be explored. The enduring comfort in Newton's story comes from the quietness of its beginning. A child in the countryside noticed the behavior of simple things. A student opened books beyond the assigned curriculum. A young scholar returned home when the university closed and continued working without knowing how famous those private investigations would become. A beam of sunlight passed through glass. An apple descended from a branch. The moon remained in its path. None of these events was new. Light, falling objects, and planetary motion had existed long before Newton. What changed was the depth of attention given to them. Newton looked carefully at familiar things until they became unfamiliar enough to question. This may be the gentlest meaning of curiosity. It does not always require distant travel or dramatic adventure. Sometimes it begins by remaining still long enough to notice what has always been present. A ray of light can contain hidden colors. A moving object can reveal a general law. A quiet orchard can lead the mind toward the moon. A question written privately in a notebook can eventually change the language through which humanity understands nature. Long after Newton's time, scientists continued to test, extend, and revise the picture of the universe. Later theories, including relativity and quantum physics, revealed conditions in which classical Newtonian mechanics is not a complete description. Yet Newton's laws remain highly useful for a vast range of ordinary motions and engineering problems. His mathematical approach became deeply woven into modern science. Every bridge standing against wind and weight, every machine transferring force, every spacecraft following a calculated path, and every student solving a basic problem of motion belongs, in some measure, to the world Newton helped describe. Yet perhaps the most restful way to remember him is not through a monument or a long equation. Picture instead the countryside at Woolsthorpe after sunset. The work of the day has ended. The fields have grown quiet. The branches of the orchard are still. Above them, the moon travels in its unbroken path, held near earth by the same natural attraction that brings fruit gently toward the grass. Inside the farmhouse, a candle burns beside paper covered with calculations. The room is silent except for the faint movement of a pen. A question is being followed, not quickly and not carelessly. Line by line, thought by thought, the visible world is being connected to the heavens. Newton's journey shows that patience can be a form of courage. To remain with a difficult question requires trust that confusion may slowly become clarity. It requires the willingness to begin again, rearrange an idea, and admit that the first explanation was not enough. His story also shows that solitude can contain possibility. Quiet hours are not necessarily empty hours. A still room may hold a journey across the universe. A simple experiment may reveal something hidden within light. A page of symbols may describe the movement of worlds. Tonight, as streets become quiet and windows grow dark, gravity continues its gentle and constant work. It holds buildings to the ground and guides rain toward the earth. It keeps the moon near our world and carries Earth along its path around the sun. We do not need to think about it for it to continue. Nature does not become impatient, and the planets do not hurry. The universe moves according to rhythms larger and quieter than any single day. Isaac Newton devoted his mind to understanding some of those rhythms. He did not answer every question, nor did he need to. His work offered future generations a stronger place from which to begin. And that may be the lasting peace within his story. Knowledge does not have to arrive all at once. A great understanding may begin with a small observation. A difficult path may open one careful step at a time. And even beneath the deepest silence of the night, the universe continues to move, in an order that patient minds can slowly learn to understand.